So I titled this Social Emotional Learning Through the Arts, an Introduction to Practical Integration. And I just want to give you guys kind of an overview of what we're going to do. It helps me to stay on track to have an agenda like this, because when I start talking about the arts, I could just go. We're going to talk about why we're doing this. We're going to go over a few basic understandings and talk about what SEL is not. And I'll explain why I want to do that in a minute. We're going to have a few brain breaks. And by brain break, I mean, I'm going to turn my camera off for about 5 minutes and you can go to the bathroom, have a snack, a wiggle, do whatever you need to do. We're not going to do like yoga together or anything like that for a brain break. I've been in, we've probably all been in trainings where we had to do that, but we're not going to do that today. I have two specific lessons I want to go, or that I want. It's lessons for you that you should be able to apply to your context. So we've got two of those, and then I want to have Q&A time at the end. So I wanted to make sure that I tell you to be writing down some questions, because we're going to have some time at the end and I'm going to expect questions. I think that's super valuable, is for us to be able to talk. So make sure you're writing down questions. And because I'm in another state, you probably never heard of me, you're like, who is this person? I wanted to give you a little bit of information about my background. I have my first degree was in regular education, and I taught in a first grade and a third grade and a fifth grade classroom for like 7 years. I moved around a little bit within my building. And during that time, I did inclusion. I did all the things that a regular classroom teacher does. I was on, I wrote IEPs. I was on teacher support team committees, textbook adoption committees, had to differentiate. I taught all the subjects. But then I had the opportunity to go teach visual art at another school in our district, because they wanted to do arts integration at that school and they needed someone that had background in it, which I did. So I have kind of that both sides of the coin background. And I have also studied visual art and education in several different several different organizations. So I wanted you to know that I have all that classroom and that classroom background experience, but I've also had these partnerships with National Board and ASCD and the Arts Integration Institute, or Institute for Arts Integration, because it's, for me, I might be the only person here, but when I'm supposed to be learning from somebody, and I have been thinking about my time in undergrad school a lot lately. When somebody's teaching me something, it's hard for me to really accept what they're saying if they're just going by a book. And maybe they're teaching classroom management out of a classroom management textbook, and they've never been in the classroom, or they were in the classroom for 2 years. That is so hard for me to accept from what they're saying. I have been in the classroom. I was in the classroom for 13 years, and I have been doing this for 3 years. But by this, I mean, I still go into the schools and I still teach. I just walk in cold and teach a class I've never met, and all their teachers sit there and watch me. So I am still in the schools, and I felt like that was really important to share, to kind of establish that I'm a teacher and I'm still a teacher. Oh, and if you want to, sometimes people in trainings will take a shot of what they're doing and post them on social media or anything. If you do, tag me. And in the future, if you're doing anything that's arts integrated and you want to show me, I would love it if you would tag me, because I love that kind of stuff. So why are we doing this? Here's what I know about why we're doing this. You all have your own reason for signing up for this. Your school district has its reasons for doing this. But this is what I know about why we're doing this together today. I named this Social Emotional Learning Through the Arts, and I could have left it at that, but I really intentionally added an introduction to practical integration, because it's great to know all this theory, which is kind of what I was talking about a minute ago with when I was in undergrad school. It matters that things are connected, and it matters how they're connected, and it matters why they're connected. But if you can't walk in your classroom and apply it, I don't know what the point was, because y'all got to teach tomorrow and the next day. So I wanted this to be something that you would definitely be able to take back and start trying, and something that's practical. It's not so theory based and so heavy. I mean, it's research based, but it's not so heavy in like this abstract pedagogy that it's going to take you 6 months to sit with it and figure out what you can do. Does that make sense? Nod your head. Okay. So application is what matters. That's what makes the difference for students. All right, some basics here. I'm gonna go through this. I'm kind of quick because I want to get into the lessons, but this I have been getting a lot of requests from school districts all over the place lately for SEL. In the last 2 years, probably. They want arts integration, but they want social emotional learning connected to it. I think that's a great thing, but I have kind of seen some like misunderstandings and just some basics. I guess this is kind of like the summary of the things that I've noticed at all these different schools, of things that I just feel like I need to run through really quick, kind of cover with you. And I don't know how much background y'all have in SEL. I know you're kind of getting started with arts integration. So this is another reason I want to do this, to just get us all on the same page before we move forward. So there are many sources of knowledge about social emotional learning. CASEL is a great source. It's a collaborative, so a lot of people are involved in that. It's not just one person, but there are other great places to get information about SEL. I have a massive stack of books here that all came from people at ASCD. These are all great. These people are experts. They wrote books. It's not necessary. None of them are from CASEL. So it's not the only, it's a great place to go. Please go there, but it's not the only place. Just wanted you to know that there's other really good stuff out there. SEL has existed as a school of thought since the 90s, but it sprung up. One thing I read said that social and emotional learning has been in existence since students and teachers have had a relationship through learning. And I think that makes sense. But it started becoming a conversation that kind of sprang out of the whole child education talk, the 60s and 70s. And they really started putting language to it and publishing the research in the 90s. So it's not new, but some of us may just now be hearing about it. I had a teacher tell me this morning that she just now heard about this and she loves it, but she had not heard of it. She's been teaching for like 25 years and had not heard of social emotional learning. So, but it's been around for a while. Generally, no matter what source you go to, whether it's one of these books or you go to CASEL, it breaks it down into about 5 domains or components: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationships. So for this part, I've got some rhetorical questions. We're not going to stop and take time to discuss it yet. We might at the end. But as I say these things, I just want you to think about, this is research that I'm about to share. So how does it make sense? Why does it make sense? What does it mean? And how does it look in practice? Just kind of be thinking about that. SEL leads to improved academic outcomes. There's research behind that statement. The benefits of SEL are both global and long-term. Social and emotional skills help improve lifetime outcomes. It's directly related to whole child education. If you don't know what whole child education is, that's where the child needs to be healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged. And it's also directly related to arts education. And it's learning that's definitely worthwhile. So SEL, here's something I've really been running into a lot lately. SEL is not something else. It's not a distraction from regular academics. It enhances academics. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy, You can't do anything if you're hungry. You can't do anything if you don't have sleep, or if you don't have a roof over your head, or you don't have appropriate clothing to wear for the weather. You have to have those needs met first. When you get those needs met, your social and emotional needs too, then you can learn. It's not a political agenda. Social and emotional development cannot be separated from cognitive development. So if you remember all that stuff we did in college, human growth and development, when we studied Vygotsky and Piaget and all those people, we know human beings are going to be developing socially and emotionally no matter what. And they could be having good experiences at this or bad ones. So it's part of a human being's development. It's not a political agenda. That's the complete opposite. And it's not a way to promote group think. So it's the opposite of that. When you do social and emotional learning, or you focus on that, you're not trying to instill your own values into children or students. Everything we do all day long exhibits our values, from the way we have kids line up at the door to the way we expect them to eat in the cafeteria. That shows our values, but we're not using SEL to teach people our values. We're trying to bring up whole human beings, and whole human beings can think for themselves. And that's what we're doing. We're not indoctrinating anyone. Okay, so lesson 1. I'm so excited about this. This is kind of focused on social skills. And usually I think educators, we know what social skills are, especially when we're talking about our students. Sharing, teamwork, communication, empathy, a lot to do with how we interact with others. I have 2 thoughts on this that I want to share. Human beings are social by nature. We want to talk. I know I've never been able to sit by my best teacher friend in a faculty meeting or at a professional development without wanting to talk. I mean, as an adult, I got in trouble for that one time in the first couple of years I was teaching, when I was right out of college. So I understand that that's just something that's natural. But we should just capitalize on that. If it's natural and we can't stop it, we should capitalize on it for learning. And it's a good thing to learn how to exist without doing harm to ourselves or others. And at the end of the day, I think that's what this is about. So I want you, I don't see anybody that's even in the room with anybody else. Is anyone I had in my head that y'all would be all together in a space, or some of you might still be at school and there might be 3 or 4 of you together. So what I think, instead of turning and talking, I think I would love if someone would volunteer to tell me a couple of things that you notice about your students regarding social skills. We don't have to be completely, we're not, you don't have to be negative. I know a lot of times that's probably the first thing we think is what students are lacking, but you can share what your students are good at about social skills, and then maybe some things that we need to work on.
I can go. This is Amy.
Okay, Amy, thank you.
I teach 2nd grade. So social skills, I think right now, we just have kids that are just really chatty. It's the beginning of the year, and they just really want to chat. And I think more than anything is they just want to be able to share and be noticed. They want that notification. And I think that's a big thing with kids in general, is this, they want people to notice them. Look what I did, look what I can do. So just finding ways for them to let them do that, where, they're getting enough attention and enough time to share, where it's not having to interfere with class and things like that, where they feel like they have to constantly talk out and share with their friends. So I think that's one thing that we deal with, is just making sure they have time to share things that they want to tell about, even if it's just, hey, last night my dad did this, or whatever, so there's my 2 cents.
It's like you were here when I was doing this, getting this presentation ready. We're going to talk about some of that stuff, but you're right. I always say that, like, human beings, we just want especially children, we want our humanity validated. Like, here I am, I'm a person and I matter, and what I'm thinking about matters. And that's one reason I love SEL and I love the arts, because that that's where that happens. And if we can somehow harness the power of all of that to teach math, or to be doing it all at the same time, boy, that's the magic. That's how we change the world. Um, One thing I notice in my own students where I live is we have a lot of kids that no one interacts with them at home. And if they do, it's really negative. They're experiencing negative adult child interactions, negative adult to adult interactions, and negative like child to child interactions at home. So the only positive interactions they're having with any adults are at school. We hope they're not having negative interactions with adults at school, but they don't. So they don't come to us automatically knowing how to do this. And that was one of the hardest things for me to learn straight out of college. I just couldn't believe they didn't know how to just talk to each other, or how to both be, two people to be getting a crayon out of the basket at the same time. They just don't know. Does anybody else have anything to share or add to any of that?
So this is Sydney. I'm a
Yes,
high
Sydney.
school math teacher. And so kind of a different perspective a little bit is I teach a lot of the remedial math classes. So I have some of the lower level students, and I struggle at the beginning of the year, especially to get the students to speak to me. So they are totally okay to talk to each other, but then as soon as they sit down and it's time for a lesson, they don't want to talk to me. So a lot of the teaching that I like to do is like inquiry-based learning and things like that, where I really want the student-driven instruction. And so I've found that the more that I can get them to talk about non-content based things first, then they will talk about the content. So I like always try to start my day with, okay, tell me about your lives. What did you eat for dinner last night? What are you doing? Or anything like that. And sometimes I have to take the 5 minutes and say, okay, every single person, you have to tell me one thing about you. And whether it's what color socks you're wearing today because you refuse to tell me anything else, then that's fine. Or you're willing to tell me something crazy and deep, that's great. But sometimes that's the only way I can get them to talk to me. But I find if I can get them to tell me that little bit, then a month later, maybe they'll start talking to me about math.
Thank you for sharing that high school perspective. And my background is mostly in elementary, but I can identify with that. I'm curious though, do you find that your students can interact appropriately with each other? They're not interacting with you appropriately. You're having to build that relationship, but you said they talk to each other with no problem, but do you think they have the
Appropriately as
skills?
Depends on what you mean as appropriately. Do they talk about appropriate content?
But
No,
not that. Do they respect each other in general? And
not all the time, no. So do they interact appropriately with each other as far as letting each other speak and actively listening with the conversation? No, not all the time.
There's room for growth in
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was awesome. And I'm so excited about this because y'all just brought it up. Like, this was perfect. That was the perfect transition to this right here. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because if it works, it just works. I think there's a whole lot of behavioral science behind why it works, which I'm not going to get into, but this works so good with any age group. But when you show kids a work of art, you've got to give them time to talk about it and get stuff out of their system. I'm going to tell you a story in a minute, but if you don't let them do that social part of it, you're going to fight that for the rest of class. They're never going to talk about what you want them to talk about, anything related to learning, until you let them get that other thing out of their system. So I will say, okay, guys, I'm going to show you something. I haven't shown it to them yet. I'll say, I'm going to show you something and we are going to talk about it and I'm going to lead you through a discussion. But I'm going to show it to you first and then I'm going to give you 30 seconds or a minute to tell your friends what you need to tell them about it and let them get it out of their system. So I've never seen it not work. I use this all the time. I mean, of course you have to have like I wouldn't be able to walk in on the first day probably with a class and do this because we don't have a relationship. But if I have enough of a relationship where I can say, okay, guys, this is what I need you to do, then it works. So here's my story. I love to use this artwork to just kind of go into some empathy with students. And here's why. The first time I tried to teach this, we were doing Vincent van Gogh. And, there's the Starry Night and the sunflowers and all the things that people love. And we put on our t-shirts and get quilts made out of it. It's on our beach towels. There's all of that. But I wanted my students to know there was a whole other side to him. And so this is one of my favorite paintings. So I showed it to them and I could not believe, I said, okay, now talk about it. This was when I first started teaching art. Y'all, I could not believe the stuff coming out of their mouths. I mean, it was shameful, the things they were saying. And then I could not get them back to it took a lot of effort for me to get them back. I felt like, oh my gosh, the things coming out of their mouth is mean and hateful and horrible. And then I felt like I was having to overcorrect them. But when I finally did get them kind of pulled back together, I figured out that if I kind of let them go ahead and get that out of their system, go ahead and tell your friend, oh, look at her nose. Because if you don't let them say, oh, look at her nose, that's a horrible thing to say, but they're going to say it, whether you give them 30 seconds to or not. You get it out of their system and then you come back to them and tell them about the artwork. Okay, these people are so poor. The only thing they have to eat are potatoes. I heard a lot of comments from students about the way their faces look. And then first of all, I think human beings looked different back then. We've, changed a lot. But you think about this, guys. If all you have in your diet is one basic food, you are not getting all the vitamins you need. You're not getting all the nourishment you need. And of course, your cheeks are going to be sunk in. Your nose is not going to be proportional to your face because your face is gaunt. You're ill, you're sick, and they look dirty. Well, they've probably been working in the field all day, like digging in the dirt, doing hard labor. So after I explained this to the kids, and then I made them sit silently and look at it for 30 seconds, and then talk about it again, they were ashamed of themselves. Like they were like, I can't believe I said that about her. I didn't know. And it moved me to tears because it showed them how ugly what they were saying was. Like, now you may not always have a class that can get to that point on their own just from this. You may have to talk them through it. But I just wanted to share this story because letting the students get it out of their system is a key strategy for what we're about to do next. So, and that's one of my favorite paintings. It's just, it moves me. So I said have like some basic stuff nearby just in case we need it. If you have a piece of paper, I want you to fold it to 4 pieces and write these words on there. And if you do anything like this with your students, don't forget what I just told you about the potato eaters, because you want them to be able to focus on this task rather than having something ridiculous to say to somebody. Just get it out of your system. Okay, we're going to look at some artwork. Thank you, Amy. We're going to look at some artworks there's 4 of them. And I was going to do this with my 7-year-old last night, but she came in having a horrible evening. So I didn't get to do it with her, and I really want to. But I will show you what I kind of got started. So if I'm an itty bitty kid and I can't write a bunch of words, I can kind of try to draw what I'm thinking. A hot mess sketch coming from an art teacher. I should be ashamed showing y'all that. But I want you to know, no matter what age group you're working with, they should be able to get something on this paper. So you're going to look at the artwork. The first one is happiness. If you want to try to draw the things, you can, or you can just make a list of what you see. So I want you to make a list of what you see that makes you think about happiness. So look in this artwork. And how do you know, or how does this picture represent happiness? You understand? I'm going to do like 30 seconds to a minute. I see people starting to look up at me, so I think y'all probably you should have something on there. Before we go on to the next artwork, I want to say another thing I encounter that's a misconception about arts integration is that you always have to be making something and producing a product. When I do trainings with teachers, I try everything I can think of to break that misconception. Creating stuff, creating a product is good. Learning through the process is better. And it's so important for people, especially when they're first learning how to do arts integration, to realize that a lesson where you're just looking at artwork is arts integration. I don't have to sit down and try to paint these kids with my students. So what we're doing is integrating art, even though we're not actually making art. There's 4 strands in the art standards, and there's only 1 about creating. So let's go to the next one. I feel like y'all already knew that, but I just had to say it. Okay, this one's what? Anger. I'll give you a few, about a minute. I didn't point this out, but you can be writing nouns, adjectives, verbs, it doesn't matter what part of speech. And finally, hope. Might take you a little longer to do this if you have small kids, and I'm a high school, I don't know if they can think and write as fast as we can, but the next step is for us to go to Jamboard. So if you're to where you can get on Jamboard, I'm going to put the link in the chat.
That works.
Thank goodness. Okay, as you're finishing up, take a minute to kind of look through these responses. We're looking for similarities and differences. I don't know how that got smaller. Oh, I see. Fix it. So after you have done this activity, and whatever format you want to do it in, you could just draw, like, you could take a big Post-it sheet and stick it on the wall, or however you wanted to do it. Have your students help you look for similarities and differences. So we've used the artwork to identify some of these things. Happiness, I noticed that we've got a pleasant expression and we've got smiles. So those two things are similar. We've got nature in both of those. So something organic, plants, nature, clean faces, clothes, and eyes. And I don't know if anyone put that over here, but it could go over there underneath hope, because her face was clean and she looked healthy. So those are some things that are similar in happiness and hope. So if we're thinking about the way we feel, or if we're trying to identify the way someone else is feeling by their facial expression or their demeanor, are there similarities in happiness and hope? So then what would be the differences that we noted? Let's see. In the hopeful one, she was alone. So maybe we could talk about, even though you're alone, you can still feel hopeful. And she had a pleasant demeanor. So she could have also been feeling happiness at the same time. What we're trying to do here is help the students identify feelings. And that's a social skill, being able to read someone, being able to identify your own feelings and what that means. Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling hopeful? And here, I think we have a lot of students, I do, who get into the anger and the worry and can't get out of it. Or they can't identify when somebody else is, like my own two daughters cannot yet identify when one is at her breaking point. She keeps the one will keep pushing and pushing and pushing, when she should have been able to tell already that it went past the playful point and got into a bad place. They're 7 and 5, so they're learning. But I think even the older kids I know still sometimes go too far, and they don't realize I should have stopped 5 minutes ago. Maybe sometimes they do things intentionally to hurt others or hurt themselves, but sometimes they don't. They just didn't realize they should have stopped. So that's kind of what this activity can help them do. Let's talk about anger and worry. Is there anybody that would share what they see, similarities and differences there? I just want to hear from you guys. It's been a while since anyone shared. Lakin?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. So some things that really stood out to me were the use of color in these, some similarities. So in the worry, even though they're different colors, we've got the blue, and then in that anger, the red was really prevalent.
That's a good point. Both of those actually had a dominant color that really, really stood out. I like that you went there with color, because I haven't mentioned any elements of art yet, because to kind of get from the enhancement stage of art, using arts in your classroom, to the integration stage, you really start using that vocabulary more. But you have to start teaching that vocabulary too. Then you can, from here, like she already looked at the color and made that note about the color, and I think I saw like harsh brush strokes.
Mhm.
This is ways that we can communicate things. So it's still about communication. And then from there, you can actually, once your students can start identifying how the artists use those elements of art to express something, you can have them analyze the artwork further. So that's just going deeper and deeper and deeper. At this point, we were mostly looking at the people and thinking about how they were feeling, but you took it on into that elements of art, which I love, and I'm glad you did. Let's see, what else did you notice? Did you have anything else to say? Kind of cut you off. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're totally fine. I think something else kind of going on with those like emotions and just body language. Both of these characters like were alone, these characters. And so you can kind of see they're alone. We've got that in both of those.
Yep. Do you think there was a lot of attention to detail there by the artist?
Yeah, definitely.
What about, would you, all right, if you were in second grade, would you think that the artist used as much detail with those two as, say, the one that showed hope and happiness?
Not as much,
They're a
no.
little more abstract,
Mhm.
weren't they? Oh, well,
Definitely.
a lot more abstract than the hope one. But
Mhm.
so there again, we can talk about how the artwork is composed, or the composition of the artwork and the elements of art, and you can take that deeper. Okay, now I think I need to get back on that was awesome. Y'all did an awesome job. Like, that Jamboard looks awesome. I'm so proud. That's the best one I've ever seen, that I've ever tried to do with anybody. So good job. If I could give you a sticker, I would give you a sticker. I don't have any of those digital stickers. All right. So, nope. I push the right buttons. I can't talk and do things if you hadn't figured that out. Okay, so here's another one of my tips. And this is kind of on the same lines as that, but it's another thing. It's a different art form. You can do a lot with students if you have them doing Tableau. Show me your hand if you've used Tableau, or you know what that is. Some of us do. It's a theater drama strategy that you can use to have students kind of show what they know, express what they're thinking. The main thing that I think that you need to know about it, if we were all in the same room, I would probably make y'all get up and do this. We can't do it. We're not all in the same room. It's just too complicated. The main thing you need to know is it uses 3 levels. So you may have a group of 3 students and they need to show you a tableau of hope. We've already looked at a picture. We have identified and talked about all these words, put them all together, and now this group of 3 students can make a tableau. They need to use the high space, middle space, which is like the torso area, and then low, and they can get all the way down to the floor. They could stand on a chair if that's something that y'all are not scared of them doing. But so they're kind of creating an image. It's a still image. They're using their bodies. So they're acting, but they're not talking or moving. So how can you show me hope in a tableau? And if you can, there are plenty of videos on YouTube of teachers making students do Tableau, if you need to go see what that looks like. But I wanted to throw that in there because this is a great place to go next after you do that other lesson. And you can use Tableau with like vocabulary or math stuff too. So it's a good thing
Hey,
to have in your toolbox. Hey,
this is Amy. How do you spell that? Tableau, or
T-A table, and then A-U. T-A-B-L-E A-U.
A-U. Okay.
Yeah.
I never heard it before, so I just needed to
Yes.
write it down.
Yes.
Sorry.
I used to always put an X on the end of that. I was like 35 years old before I knew I wasn't supposed to put an X on the end of it. My
I
brother
could,
is in New Orleans.
if I could interrupt for a second, I just want to
Yes.
say, I use Tableau. I teach 6th grade English,
Mhm.
and I use it all year long. We did tableaus to teach inferencing. I told the group to what their location was going to be in the hallway. Then they had to come and create that tableau, and everyone else had to infer what it is and give me text evidence. We create tableaus of our books, so I just want to say you definitely can use this in a lot of different areas. So.
Oh, it's so versatile. It would be my go-to drama strategy. And thank you for sharing that, Jeff. So to wrap up this first lesson, I want to hear from you about what does this help your students do and understand? It's been really art heavy so far, and SEL heavy, less. We haven't talked much about math or anything like that. But what other content could be included? Like what academic regular content could we use? I hate to say academic content because I feel like the arts are academic, but what like math, language, social studies could be included? So I want to hear from you. I know we were going to turn and talk, but we can't. So somebody that hasn't already shared, maybe.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, but if you have already shared, please share. I was trying to rope some new people in. Go ahead.
For 2nd grade, ELA is you could teach the kids how to use adjectives to describe. So that's one of our standards, is teaching them what an adjective is and how to use those words to describe things.
I love that. You could say, I told you use any parts of speech. You could tell them only use adjectives. And there you are doing art, you're doing language, adjectives, and you're doing an SEL lesson all at the same time.
I was thinking maybe you could use this in like a historical context, pick time periods that you were studying. I'm not a history teacher, so sorry. Or like force and motion, if you had still paintings that showed the motion, showed the movement, so it would open that conversation.
I did this with I think it was 5th grade. They were talking about the Boston Tea Party. This was at a school in South Mississippi, and we looked at some propaganda images that had been painted to communicate about the Boston Tea Party. And so I love that. That's a great point, Allison, the historical. And then there's tons of art prints that have science elements in there. Anything else? Somebody talk about math. Math is, I think, trickier. I shouldn't have set it up like that, but I do think it is. Does anybody have any ideas? Other than, what about word problems? I used to have, hey, Sydney.
You go, Sydney.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't want to be the only, I think I'm like the only math person that's here, but
Okay.
do you mean in relation to like the looking at things and then talking about them? Yeah, I think it would be easier maybe on an elementary standpoint. It's kind of hard to dissect it on a secondary standpoint just because they get a little bit complex. So it might be difficult to have a dissection that you could talk about and still kind of have a meaningful discussion, if that makes sense, without getting it too complex. But maybe on a elementary level, if you were, I do stuff to talk about taking written out forms and turning them into symbols and numbers. So like the product of a number and 2 is 7, and then turning that into X times like 2X equals 7 or something like that. So You could show them, I don't know, show them things like that, maybe.
In the
I don't know.
art, like use an art print to show them something like that.
Yeah, or maybe you could use an art print and talk about how, how many of this do you see in this print? Okay, well, how many of this object do you see in this print? And, and then work on the combinations of those different objects, but, looking at a certain print and identifying quantities of objects or something like that.
Artists like Kandinsky are great for doing that with math.
Mm-hmm.
It's abstract, it's shapes and colors and lines. And you can also talk, when you get to the point where if you can talk about the elements of art, you can have them analyze that through the elements of art, and then talk about, well, what feeling is communicated here? What feeling do you think the artist was trying to communicate? He used a lot of red. What could that mean?
Yeah.
I believe 100% there is a way to do it. But I will be honest with you, when I did this training, a lot of the things that were going through my mind were elementary, because I knew we're going to have a lot of second grade teachers. So I'm always happy to talk and brainstorm. And that was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I could
Anybody
jump in.
else?
Is that okay? Yeah, my name's Alyssa. I teach high school art and photography. So I don't know if this helps, but I found there's some artists out there that actually use math to create a piece, whether it be using like the spiral of a pendulum. It's really a lot more abstract, right? But I find that today we did an activity in photography, and we talked about, this is really nerdy and I have no idea how to describe it by any means, but the quantum like physics, and we had to use that. So we did something that we talked about last time we met, where we played music, and then I challenged them, like you guys challenged us, to come up with something that kind of, produce an image that related to whatever we were listening to. So we played something, and then they thought of quantum physics and that sort of a side of things. So anyhow, there's artists out there that use that side of the brain, right, to make a piece. I knew a guy when I was in my undergrad who that's what he did, but his art, which was really odd, but he drew it all. It was literally just kind of mimicking lines and what he saw in the natural world, but he had to use equations to figure it all out. Just kind of really cerebral if you think about it, right? But that's one thing that I try to do, is attach that side of things to the people in the room that, are more that side of the world.
You're absolutely right. There
Create.
are tons of artists, and I would say especially contemporary artists that use that that have to use math to create what they've created. And I think that for older kids, especially when you're using contemporary artists, the older kids, to me, he just don't get into like these old guys as much as they do. Oh, this guy's still living and he has an Instagram account. Be careful talking about whether or not an artist has Instagram, because they don't think about the fact that kids could get on there and see what before they post stuff. But when you and they're gonna go home and look up stuff anyway. But these people are contemporary, and that they're participating in the world that we're participating in. And the older kids really do latch on to that, I think. But if you want to tie it back, and I don't mean for this to sound like an oversimplification, but at the high school level, if you're trying to tie it back to SEL, which is why we're here today, go in for those colors and it's colors, lines, and shapes. What kind of textures you see, like what is the artist trying to communicate? How do these things express feelings? How does it relate to feelings? Just trying to get that into the conversation as part of the analysis is that is the first step in the door with SEL. Anybody else? I don't want anybody to miss out on sharing. Hey, Sydney.
Can you give an example of tying SEL to the shapes? Because I definitely could tie in like the pictures into the shapes, but maybe I'm a little confused on.
Yeah. So I've got Kandinsky on my mind. I don't know why. I guess because I said it earlier. There are some of his works where there's multiple circles. That shape repeats. So I'm talking about the shape of a circle, but I'm also talking about repetition and pattern. Circles make me feel calm. When I am stressed out, I get a sheet of paper and I just draw circles over and over and over. I love polka dots. I have polka dots everywhere because it's something about it that calms me. It soothes me. When I look at Kandinsky's work and I see these repeating circles, I'm drawn to that because those circles make me feel good.
So like finding a
that's-
pattern or
How is that
things
shape
like that.
used?
Texture.
It's not
Yeah.
just that, oh,
Okay.
circle, we say like red might make you feel anxious or it might represent anger. A circle does not necessarily represent anything specific, but you can definitely talk about how it makes you feel when it's combined
Yeah.
with something else. Yeah. Did that help?
Okay. Yeah, it does.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Okay.
I wanted to add
Anna.
something. So,
Uh-huh.
so I do, I'm a second grade teacher and I do a whole unit on social emotional learning. And so the first 2 weeks we talked just about facial expressions and body language. And so my go-to phrase right now is look at their face. How do they feel right now? But this morning we actually I gave them scenarios that they had to act out. We're not looking at prints, but they're moving their body. So it's more kinesthetic for them. So it would be like, I would give them scenarios of you spilled your water on your art project. Act out how you would feel, or what would be your response to that. And then I gave them scenarios, and then the next step would be what is a thing that makes you frustrated, or what is something that makes you nervous. And so it's bridging them, giving them the scenario of what's happening, and then moving from that to the emotion, and then they have to apply that to their own life also. And so getting them up and moving, they were able to, they knew how they acted in those emotions, and then they then tied like the emotion and was able to apply it to something else.
I like that because it is so important. This is one thing arts integration helps us do, is interacting with content in multiple ways. And that's what you have them doing.
Yeah.
But what art form is movement? So dance, how is there, I feel like you're right there on getting that to an arts. That's a great lesson what you're doing, but you could pull in some dance vocabulary or something and, get a little bit, what's the word? Just a little bit more in there, like a little bit more bang for your buck.
I think I'm still new at it, so I'm not sure all of my things that I need to be doing. So I was thinking more like along the drama side of it, like, okay, getting them moving, like acting out things.
So an easy way to something that we just talked about, Tableau, an easy way to take that up a notch more towards arts integration is have them use high, middle, and low as they're acting it out. And if they, that's a drama understanding.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? I think, like Anna just pointed out or showed me, y'all are already halfway doing it. Not halfway. That sounded weird. In the South, we say, oh, somebody halfway did that. That's not what I meant. You're already halfway there. You're already doing so much already. It's just going to take just a little bit to get the arts integration in there because you're already on top of everything else. Okay. And I just have to say, I just love hearing y'all talk because I can just tell how smart and committed y'all are. It's amazing. All right, now I do think we need a brain break. I think we'll take 5 minutes to go to the restroom if you need to. Stand up and walk a circle around your chair. Just come back in 5 minutes. I'm not gonna play music or anything. Just come back in 5 minutes. It's 5:32, so come back. It's 5:33. Come back at 5:40. Get a snack if you need to, some caffeine. Okay, hey guys, I'm back. That was too short, wasn't it? Okay, I have another tip. This is a little, I just wanted to throw this in here because we looked at those art prints. And before we move on into the next lesson, I just have this to say. Emotional regulation can be explicitly taught. I grew up I'm going to tell y'all my story. Y'all know everything about me by the end of this. I grew up in a normal home. Like I had two parents in my home. We went to church on Sundays, like just typical, what we would say is like a good home to raise a child in. So I had lots of things going in my favor as I was growing up. When I got older and out on my own, there were still things I had to learn about regulating my own emotions and feelings. I even, when I got my first apartment, I mean, I can remember having just a crying spell over something stupid because I had not yet learned completely how to regulate my feelings and my emotions. And so all of our students need this. And I'm just sharing that about myself because I want to make sure we know we're not just talking about a certain socioeconomic demographic or anything like that. We're talking about across the board. Everybody needs this. And if you think about it, you could probably identify with what I just told you about myself. We all are learning this, even no matter what our backgrounds are. So you can actually kind of use an art print to help students start to think about this stuff. And I'm going to kind of walk you through one. I'm going to do my turn and then your turn. So this is the art print I chose. I'm going to do it. Y'all just kind of watch me. I like to model stuff for kids when I'm thinking about artwork. So this is exactly how I would do this with students. So I see bright colors. Like I see mostly green. I see some yellow. Makes me feel kind of like if I went outside and laid down in the grass, that might be relaxing. I mean, I see a man and he looks like he might have just chopped down a tree. He's outside. I wish I was outside. When I'm outside by myself, it feels good. Smell, breathe it in. I smell wood and earthy things. I can smell the grass, but I can smell that wood that just got cut. Maybe you've never been around a tree that's been cut down and don't know what that smells like, but maybe you've gotten behind a truck of lumber on the highway and you could identify that smell that way. I can hear birds. I don't see the birds, but I know they're there. They're chirping, they're happy. Let me see what I can taste. Maybe he's had a coffee cup down there on the tree stump. I can smell that coffee. I can taste that coffee. I don't like coffee. I think I'm going to change it. It's hot chocolate now. I can taste hot chocolate. So I've just went through my 5 senses and I feel calm. I feel pretty good right now. I mean, that really does kind of give us a chance to change our mindset. I know a lot of teachers use things like calm down corners and things like that. Put an art print in there and let that be one of the things that they can do because I feel good. Like it made me feel good. It really did. I'm an adult sitting here talking about an art print, but that made me feel good. I feel pretty good. Like kind of gave me a rush of something. So if I needed to calm down because I was mad because somebody took the ball away from me at recess, this is something I could do to reset. So just because I want to make sure that you can walk through your emotions, and like I did, I'm going to give you a minute to look at one and you just kind of run through it in your mind. And then if somebody wants to talk it out for us, that would be awesome.
I have
knowing-
a question really quick.
Yes.
So I did a trauma informed training, and so they talk about like just triggers. So how do you choose an art print that you don't think is going to trigger a child? So like I can see a kid like that might be frustrated or upset, and they look at this picture and they see the axe and they go to that instead. You know what I mean?
So I just chose for this training, I chose what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about that smell of a tree. That's why I chose this. But if I probably wouldn't put this one in a calm down corner with small children.
Right.
So that's a good point, and I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I knew it was going to be adults here.
Right.
You could choose artworks that don't have people in them, landscapes, but I mean, then you may have somebody that nearly drowned, and water is a trigger. But I don't know. If you are aware of triggers, known triggers, you would stay away from them. If you learn about it later, take it down and address it with the student. But I think it's just like with anything else. How do you know the stories they read in their textbooks aren't going to be triggers? I mean, I have triggers, that axe doesn't trigger me, but it could trigger somebody. Literally, I almost did say when I was talking that out that grass makes me really, really sick. I had to like not let my mind go there about thinking about EpiPens and ER visits when I was looking at this. So in a way, learning to work through a trigger is a skill in itself, which may be more appropriate for much older people. But I think I really feel like if you can stay away from images with people, that might be the best place to start. And I don't have the trauma-informed official answer for that. Do you have thoughts after what I just said?
No, I was really just curious. I didn't mean to like.
I mean, I
open a
don't.
whole new topic there, but.
So that's awesome. I'm glad you brought that up. And that's something I could think about more, like maybe next time I do this training, I won't use this print again. But I would love to know the answer. I don't know how you avoid, like I taught 600 kids a year when I taught visual art. How do I know?
How do you accommodate that? All 600 basically.
Yeah. Or is it more, and like I said, I don't have the trauma informed answer. I'm not exactly sure what someone that's an expert in that would say. I can try to find out. And I probably will try to find out, because now I really want to know like what the official answer would be. But something tells me that there's no way to try to completely avoid everything. I mean, you can't avoid the earth. Am I getting somewhere in the ballpark for what you were thinking?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, don't be sorry. I'm so glad. I just don't know. And I feel like, what I said about I worked through my trigger. Hopefully humans can get to that. We can heal. We're talking about the whole child. We want that for everybody. I want that for everybody. And I don't want to cause harm to anyone because I showed them an art print that triggers. But that was such a good point. I'm so glad you brought that up. Such a good question. You made me think. Okay, so I was going to let you just kind of try to run through this one in your mind. But I did love the idea of having them just get lost in art and as a calming strategy. So here, this right here, ready connections. I don't know how much of what you teach is like prescribed as far as like you're handed a curriculum. At the district, where I used to work full time, we had a lot that was just handed, not to the art teacher, but handed, like, here's what you're doing this day and how you're going to do it. But the teachers always found a way to put their own special blend in there with it too. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, when I first started teaching, well, we had to come up with everything from scratch ourselves. Then we got a curriculum department, we got help with that, and we didn't have to come up with as much. But even if someone hands you something that's scripted or is highly prescribed about what you're going to do, you can still find ways to do this. Especially if you know what standard you're going to be teaching on what week, you can do this. It's about finding ready connections between the standards and the arts and the SEL. And I love this terminology, ready connections. It's already there. So I put ready in pink on the screen. It's already there for you. The connection is right there. It's ready. You just got to grab it. And it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. Everything is connected. Reason we're integrating is because everything is connected. Nobody is living in a world where they have 10 minutes where they use language, and then the next 10 minutes they only use numbers, and the next 10 minutes they only use social studies. We are doing all these things all the time, all at once. Everybody is. So nothing exists in isolation. So that's what we're trying to get to, is so that we're teaching that way too. The clues are in the verbs. Keep that in mind. And I wanted to go over these. These are 4 words that I'm going to use a lot. So cognitive demand is what is demanded of the students' brains. Like, what are they having to do cognitively? What is being demanded of them? There we have things that are low cognitive demand, and we have things that we can do that are high cognitive demand. Standards, y'all know what standards are, but for this, I'm using Common Core because this, even Mississippi has their own our own standards document, but it's like somebody cut and pasted out of Common Core into Mississippi. So Common Core is kind of universal. Everybody's at least seen it before. I don't really even know what standards y'all use, but that's what I pulled for this. So y'all can just be aware of that. Integration, everything's connected. We talk about arts integration, but really it's not just about arts integration. It's about everything being connected. I feel like we're really doing kids and students a disservice when we try to isolate subject matter. I mean, since the dawn of time, we've had math class and then reading class and then science class. That's how I was taught. Okay, now we're going to have reading, put your math book up. But the more we can overlap stuff, the better it's going to be for everybody in the long run, because I need these kids that we're teaching now to be able to think critically, because when they're adults, I'm going to be an old lady and I want them to be able to function well. I want them to be happy and whole so that I can be happy and whole. So it benefits everybody. And along those same lines, I just want to throw in, if you're a 3rd grade reading teacher and you've got a 3rd grade math teacher that's on board with this, and you guys can get together and somehow connect what y'all are doing so that they're hearing about, maybe you're using a Kandinsky print in both classes and they've heard that in both classes. That helps them. It helps them get more engaged. It helps them make connections on a broader level, and it's just better for them. And then unpacking, y'all probably heard unpacking the standards. Ever since Common Core came about, we have sat around and unpacked standards. But really, I used to, and I can't tell you how many trainings I sat in when Common Core first came about, and we had to unpack standards. And I was like, just read it. Why are we unpacking it? Like, I didn't understand. But now I'm thinking, okay, unpacking is not just about what the standard says. It's like, what does it really mean? Because if we're not careful, sometimes we can think it means one thing and it doesn't. So we have to make sure we're unpacking and understanding. All right, so here are some possible So these verbs came from depth of knowledge, Bloom's taxonomy, and Costa's levels of questioning. It's not all of the verbs that go with those. I just kind of hand picked. So this is like a sampling of how this looks. Some of the verbs overlap, some don't. I've probably missed some overlap. It's not comprehensive. So make sure you realize that, but I want you to see how this looks. I've got these verbs kind of classified by the SEL. So self-awareness, if the students are acting something, there's some level of self-awareness that they've got to have. So that might be a place where you could plug in. If your standard says act, blah, 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 that's a place you could plug in some self-awareness. Let me find one. Let's see. No, I don't want to do that one. Contrast. That's one we really might see in the standards, like that you teach. Act might be in a drama standard, but you may see contrast in your standards as the verb. It may say contrast something, something, something. Okay, all right, if we're doing this standard and contrast is the standard, I know there's a ready connection there between this standard and self-awareness. Now, what can we do so we can kill two birds with one stone? So, Blake, could you let me know if that made sense? Like, maybe summarize what I just said, because I feel like, it's when you're like virtual and you're not in the room with people, sometimes it's kind of hard to get feedback, and I don't want to move on to the next slide until I at least feel a little bit like we know what's happening here.
Yeah, that absolutely made
And
sense.
you won't hurt my feelings if it doesn't. Tell me what I need to do.
Well, you're just talking about, like, I teach choir, so I have standards, but do I ever really look at them? If I'm honest, no, because I'm just teaching all the music.
Yeah.
But like if I had a standard, that had the word contrast in it, I would then, be able to make that connection to, I can connect that directly to self-awareness, and we can do a bunch of different things with that.
What
which
about
is essentially
perform? Do you see perform on there?
Yeah. Let's see where it's at.
It's under relationship.
There it is. Yeah.
So maybe we've got that ready. We've already got that ready. Now we know that those things, there's a connection. Like what else could I do that might make us be able to work on some SEL as we're getting ready to perform something.
Yeah.
This is like how you can sneak it in without changing everything you're doing to teach SEL, so you can address this stuff while you're also still doing what you have to do. You're not having to do something extra. You're not having to teach an extra lesson. You have this connection so that it can all be happening at the same time. Thank you for explaining that. That tells me what I need to know. So I would like, this is not comprehensive, like I said, but there's a lot of it's a good starting place if you're like, I know we're going to do, like, I got to do something with debate in October. Debates on here under social awareness. Okay, what can I do so I can make sure that I'm also addressing some SEL while we're doing debate? And you can add to this. It's also very important, and I believe it says it in the first sentence at the top. These are the higher level cognitive demand verbs. You may notice there's not like recall on here or that select an answer. I'm drawing a blank on what the lower level verbs are, but there's not that basic recall kind of task, not on here. These are the higher level ones. And those lower level ones could be on here too, but if you can do the higher level ones, I think you're going to, again, get more bang for your buck. But working in that higher level of cognitive demand is it helps your students make more connections and see that everything is connected. And no, I know nobody's thinking this, but I know nobody here is thinking this. I've been around y'all long enough, I can tell you're not thinking this, but I have heard this in other training, so I'm still going to address it. Just because you have a student that is not performing as high as they should, or you have a student that has learning disabilities, or you have a student that can't multiply yet, that does not mean they cannot do high level cognitive demand. Every student can create something. Create is a high level cognitive demand. All students should be doing high level cognitive demand. We don't want to sell them short and just only let them do basic recall because they, we think they can't do it. They can do it. So here I have 3 examples of how this looks with this actual standard. And I just used all 2nd grade for this. So I didn't look at any high school standards for these examples, but this standard is a literacy standard for 2nd grade, write opinion pieces. I know y'all have these memorized probably if y'all are using this version, but state an opinion, supply reasons that support the opinion, use linking words to connect. So they're writing something, and the verb that we're looking at here, the main verb is write. Write was not on that list. If you think about it, writing is a form of creating. So they are creating something here. But when I saw supply reasons, I'm unpacking the standard, and I know that supplying reasons is a form of justification. And that was on here. Justify right here. Self-management. Self-management, go back, is to be able to control one's feelings, ideas, choices in various contexts. So the context for this is that they've got to form an opinion and they've got to justify it all while they're writing about it. How this relates to self-management from my point of view is that they can't just form an opinion and say it's my opinion because that's what they want it to be. They've got to have a justification for it. We see this all the time with adults, y'all. You can't just make up something and say it's your opinion and you have nothing to support that. So that's a self-management skill, being able to control your feelings and your ideas, being able to recognize, just because I feel like this is the way it should be, I don't have any reasoning for that. I've got to write and I've got to justify. So there's a strong connection there. And then this is where I said I had something for Blake. Form an opinion. Here's just something that when you get ready to start putting art in this too, here's some ideas. This is like a brainstorm of what you could do with art. Form an opinion about a work of art. And I try to think of things that most students don't know about. Even in Mississippi, nobody knows what bluegrass is. So I put that on there. Play one of those bluegrass, like Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs pieces that doesn't have any singing, and let them form an opinion about it. You've exposed them to something new. They've got to justify. Greek bass, I thought of that because some kids might not think that's actual work of art because it's a functional piece. Show them a folk dance and have them do this. And then I said, the acting in a popular kids show, that Baby Shark stuff, or my children love that show Spirit. I'm so tired of that, but on Netflix. Oh gosh. Maybe have them look at that like it's some kind of form of art. Now I wouldn't be like, oh, we're gonna watch Spirit today and y'all are gonna write about it. They can write about it if they already saw Spirit at home. But having them look at that as a work of art is totally okay. Any questions on that standard? Okay. Here's the next one. I chose math. I found that math was like the verbs for math were real flat. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but they were just kind of flat. No creating anything new. So it was I really had to do some unpacking to get here. Compare 2 3-digit numbers based on the meanings of hundreds, tens, and ones digits. So they're greater than, less than, equal to. So I honed in on that verb compare. Compare was on the chart I showed you under relationship skills. So I know there's already connection there already. Now, when I think about what they're doing with the standard, they're having to understand the relationships between hundreds, I've misspelled hundreds, tens and ones. I have to fix that. So they're looking at like a system, math, the number, base 10 system, and they're understanding the relationships there. Relationship skills for SEL relate to communicating and maintaining relationships, or being able to communicate to maintain relationships. So there is an element in that SEL relationship skills to understanding how things fit together, understanding that nothing exists in isolation. So there's a ready connection there. Now what you do with it is a whole different thing. Here's some ideas for art. Like I'm working with a partner to create a mini collage out of scrap paper that represents the comparison of 2 3-digit numbers, and then having them reflect on the process. So they're having to work with someone. That's relationship skills, but all the while they're trying to understand this relationship between numbers, and to be able to work together to, and I say mini collage, like something like this with just scrap paper. You don't tell them how to do it, just have them try to figure out how to show that with that paper. They're also having to connect with and work on the relationship. Like, how are we going to get this done? She didn't tell us exactly step by step how to do it. We got to figure it out. What's our relationship and how are we going to make that happen? It's okay. One more. I keep having to move y'all from one side of the screen to the next. Recognize and draw shapes having specified attributes such as a given number of angles or a given number of equal faces. All right, I was looking at the verbs recognize and draw. Finally, there's a math standard with something where they can make something new or make something. They're not going to be making something new because they can't make a new shape, but draw. Draw was not on that list, but I know that depict means the same thing as draw. So I unpacked the standard, I figured out what the synonym was there, and I know that depicting kind of has a ready connection to responsible decision making, making thoughtful and conscious choices across a variety of situations. And if you think about it, the second grade, if they're trying to make a hexagon, they have to be thoughtful and they have to make conscious choices to get that done, because there is a prescribed way to make a hexagon. You can't just, again, it's like that. You can't just make it up and call it a hexagon because you want to. And other people need to be able to tell us a hexagon. So you've got to be thoughtful about what you're doing. And to get some art in there with it, you can have them make these shapes on the floor tiles and then create a dance that follows those attributes. So they're making conscious decisions. They're doing that good decision-making process. That was already a ready connection where if you do this lesson, you're getting some SEL in there already. Now what is this? Okay, so what are your next steps going to be? I can tell you, I'm telling you what I know just based from talking to Allison. She and I talked about you guys kind of trying out some of this stuff and thinking about through it in your context for the next time when y'all meet. So I thought it'd be a good idea, like if you just try out one of the strategies that we talked about. I'm not saying you have to rewrite your curriculum and use all those ready connections in 2 weeks. There was lots of little things in there that you can try out with your students. And then maybe try to find 1 or 2 of your own ready connections so that you could talk about that next time. Like you could be like, okay, I did notice that would probably work together. Then so that's kind of like the short-term thing that would be your next steps. The long-term next steps, if you were going to continue your learning based on what we've talked about, you would need to start building in some supports in classroom management that would support integrated learning. I'm sure that this does not apply to y'all, but it's the first example that comes to my mind. If you can't just tell students, hey, you have to talk about this and expect them to I kind of alluded to this at the beginning, just know what to do. You kind of have to teach that. So you have to kind of teach that, how you want that to look and practice it, and then they can do it automatically eventually. So I know y'all have good classroom management. There are though some things that you can tweak that can make it easier to do arts in the room with kids. And then I would think, getting to the point where you can start using arts vocabulary to get from enhancement to actual integration. It just helps you go deeper. And then you can start writing, SEL, your own specific for your students. Like, what your students need to work on when it comes to social and emotional learning. So then eventually you'll get to where you can think, oh, I know exactly what to do to help them with this. I've already found that ready connection 2 years ago, and I can tell this group needs it, and it'll be like a second nature. And I know I feel like that's what your district is trying to get to. Just based on having had conversations with some curriculum people and your superintendent and with Allison. And then now we have 15 minutes. Oh, we did so good on time. Now I say, it says, everyone asked me 2 questions. That's not realistic. There's a lot of us. But I told you at the beginning to be thinking of questions so that we're not going to sit here for 15 minutes and y'all are going to stare at my forehead and nobody's going to say anything. So I said a PD with me is just not successful if we don't have meaningful question and answers. And we've had that so far. So I know I'm not going to have to call anybody out. You guys have been amazing in that way. You have been willing to share, and I cannot commend you enough on that, but we have 15 minutes to where we could do some more of that. Excuse me. And I do think it's, if anybody has a question about those ready connections, would be a good place to start, or not just a question, but if you have something to add. I know y'all are tired.
This is Amy.
Hey, Amy.
Have you seen in any of the schools, like public schools that you've worked with, have you seen any of their art teachers, music teachers, actually pushing into the classrooms to do these kinds of things on a regular basis? Or is this just something that, oh, it's an idea, it's something that's great, you can do? You know, are there districts that are actually doing this on a regular basis? And I know you said the research is showing that this is good, and I know they're doing research to find out if it's worthwhile. You know, so is it big? Is it new? Is it old and it's just coming back and so forth?
Are you talking about the arts integration or the SEL or both?
I'm talking about the arts integration. Like, are they utilizing their regular art teachers and their music teachers on a regular basis to come in and help the teachers with these things? Are you seeing that
I see
as a
that
normal thing,
all
or is
over
this
the
just a
place.
special kind of a thing?
In this, okay, this is, I've seen so many schools like all over the place. I've seen school, like been out to California and worked with some schools out there. I saw, unfortunately, a lot of what I saw was a label on the school, and there was none of this was happening. And it's not because the teachers didn't want to do it. It was just, you know, as well as I do, how much is on y'all's plates. There's so much to do. So I will say, hopefully, you know, we were able to help them and get kind of put stuff in motion so that they could do what they wanted to do. I've seen that. So I've seen literally nothing going on. I've seen a middle of the road where schools are kind of new to it and they're trying to get it done. And there's lots of people on board, from the superintendent and school board all the way down to the art teachers. And lots of people are trying to make it work. And then I have seen, and I work with our arts commission here and mentor some schools here in Mississippi. And those schools, I mean, they have been doing this a really long time. And I mean, I'm talking like years. And it's like a well-oiled machine at this point. They're not having as much turnover in their staffs. So they've got that knowledge base and that skill set in their buildings. And I think a lot of that is because they like what they're doing, even though it's a hard job. This job is hard, y'all. We know that. Even though it's hard, they have a little more job satisfaction because they're doing arts. And so now I'm going to talk about the district where I'm at. When I was doing art full time, half of my day was to teach art classes, and the other half of my day was to go meet with the teachers and have a PLC with them, and help them plan lessons, like kind of like what we did today. We would have ideas, we would talk about what standards they were teaching, and we'd flesh all that out so that they could go teach it. I also went and co-taught arts integration lessons. So that was the long answer. The short answer is there are a lot of schools doing it, and it's not new. It's not, I think it's catching on. More people are learning about it, which is a good thing, but it's not new. But there are lots and lots of schools that are doing the most with it. It can be done. Did that answer your question? Kind of.
Yeah. I just wanted to know the background of this, you know, how much it's been used and where it's going. And, you know, you said a lot of this was research based, and
Yes.
I just kind of wanted to know in what aspect, and, you know, how many districts are actually trying to use it. Or like you said, you know, a lot of teachers and districts are like, oh, we just don't have time, or there's just no way. And, or, you know, there's not time for like your arts teachers to meet with your, you know, your regular classroom teachers. Like today, you know, Allison met with us, the second grade teachers here in our district, to talk about how she can come in and teach some different lessons and do some things with us to help, integrate the arts within our classroom. But see, that took time. That took almost a whole hour, of our planning time during the week to do that. So, those are things to consider when you're doing research and these kinds of things, is that, you have to table in the time that it takes for those teachers to meet and, do those things. But it was really good though. It was awesome.
Well, so you have to get everybody, you got to get enough people on board. Yeah, it's amazing that this many people showed up to this, to me, for a district that's new to this. When you're getting people on board, you're always going to have people who are in the resistance. They just don't want to do it. I was at a school for 7 years, and there were some people that did it because I was there and my principal wanted us to do it. And the minute I left, they quit doing it. And the minute the principal left. But so the Mississippi Arts Commission is where I have the most research knowledge from, because that's where I'm at. They have published a lot of reports on arts integration. So you could check that out if you wanted to see some research. The Institute for Arts Integration and STEAM has lots and lots of research resources too. So I know the Mississippi Arts Commission has been researching this for at least 20 years. They have data going back at least 20 years on the schools in Mississippi that are doing it.
And there's the Missouri Arts Alliance, which I can send everybody out. There's a monthly newsletter that comes out. You guys can start getting that. It's just tons of resources in Missouri.
Good. I'm glad you have that state specific.
Yes, I'll get that to everybody.
Amanda, you mentioned that you co-taught some arts integration stuff. If you don't mind, was that something that you did? Was that you were assigned to that teacher that hour? I have a co-teacher that I work with for 3 hours out of my day, and I've worked with her for a few years now. But I work with her on a sped level, as far as she co-teaches with me, as she's a sped teacher and I'm a math teacher, and so we co-teach. Is that something that your district allowed, and you were paid to co-teach as an arts integration teacher? That's something that your district was passionate about and allowed that, or that was something that you had a planned time and you chose to do that?
Mm-mm. No, I had a really, really supportive principal and superintendent, and Dr. Loden was my superintendent.
Oh,
when so there's just, I don't know if y'all knew that or not, at the time that I was doing this. So we had that support from the top down.
okay.
And the principal that I was with, she built my schedule to where I had a half a day to do that. And so I wasn't assigned to any specific teacher. The teachers had to say, I had this idea about this lesson and I know it could work, but I don't think I can teach the art part. Can you come in and do it? And it was so good for the kids to see us both together, the art teacher and the regular teacher.
So you could travel as a co-teacher throughout the year.
It got for me, yes. It got to the point though where there was too much, the need was too great. I couldn't be in that many classrooms at one time. So I started videoing my part of it, and it still worked.
Okay.
If all the fourth grade teachers wanted to do that, because one person sees you in there and then they all kind of want you, and that's an amazing thing, but it's not realistic. So I would videotape my part of the lesson, and they would do that, and the kids would still see me. They'd be like, there's Miss Kulaba. So there was still that kind of personal connection to me. It wasn't like they just pulled up some random person on YouTube to do the art with. So
that just makes it sound much more doable and approachable to have an actual co-teacher. I know that we have the resources to talk about it outside of school and things like that, but just from a co-teaching perspective and a co-teaching model, I love co-teaching. I'm very passionate about co-teaching, but I've never thought about actually fully co-teaching from an arts integration perspective. So that makes it sound much more approachable and things, just from a time management perspective. So that just sounds awesome.
So one of my goals is, when I do trainings with teachers, is always to try to show this can be done without you killing yourself. You can't, y'all, you cannot do one more thing. And I'm not ever going to be the person that's going to sit here and say, you got to do one more thing. I can't do that. I can't live with myself, and I could not look you in the face and say that to you. But I can try to show you that if you want this, you can make it happen, and it's not going to make your life harder. It's going to be better, because you're going to be happier. You're going to be prouder. Your students are going to be better. You're going to be doing long-term work. It's not just about a test. It matters. It's just, it can be done if you want to do it. And that was the thing about the school that I was at. I think our school, we had that support through the district, but our school was really doing something because we had that principal who wanted it. And ultimately, we had enough people in our building that wanted that for the kids. We were the school across the railroad tracks. When I left my one school that was kind of a wealthy school to go to that school to teach art, people said, I can't believe you're going there willingly. I thought that was the school they sent you to when they wanted you to leave the district. That school was falling down. I mean, people were shooting up the buildings, and we said, we're going to do this. And we turned that place around, and it took time, but there were enough of us that wanted to do it. And no, I don't think anybody felt like they were doing extra.
Just to say in there, like Sydney, I have that flexibility in my afternoon schedule, and like no one's telling me to do it, but nobody's telling me not to do it. So that's why I was in with second grade today, and I'll be in there in October some days. So we'll email and talk, but let's do something.
Yeah, I mean, to take a full hour and physically co-teach, I mean, I'd be very interested in that.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
And we've talked to Dr. Loden and Dr. Copper and Dr. Chastain about, like, if we go this route, we will need some people that is their job, is to do that. Because it's not something that we can just add to everybody's plate and say, yep, this is what the district's doing, good luck. No, like, there will be people that will provide you with the resources and come into your classroom, whoever those people are. But it will happen if our district goes when our district goes that route.
Yeah, I like that. I can't put words in the man's mouth, but I know he knows. I know your superintendent knows. I know Allison knows. I know Allison is passionate about this. I know your superintendent is too. He believes in it. Y'all are in a good place. You're not fighting the man trying to do something that they don't want you to do. You're not having to fight your community for it. You're not having to fight central office. You have so many good things already in place. But it's going to be up to you guys ultimately to take the action of going back to your classroom and putting it into practice. So you can be signed up. I think you can be signed up for this, and you can show up and you can do everything Allison asked you to do. But if you don't go back to your room and do it, it's not gonna, no amount of anybody's support from central office is going to be able to make it happen. And y'all are awesome. I know I'm gonna get teared up because I always do, but nothing makes me happier than to see teachers that I don't believe teachers should have to work for free and give up all their free time and whatever and break their backs. I think what's good for us is good for students and vice versa. And so I'm not saying, hey, I see this group of teachers going way above and beyond. Y'all are, but in a good way. Like, you care. That's what I'm getting at. You can work 90 hours a week, and if you don't care about what you're doing, it doesn't matter. I can tell you guys are passionate and you care. And nothing would make me happier than to see you get this done. Kill 3 birds with 1 stone, And I sincerely mean this. You were an awesome group to work with. I'm glad I met you guys. And if you need anything, I have a website. It's Party in the Art Room. It's not my name. It's Party in the Art Room. If you need me, you can get to me through that. But Allison has my email too and phone number. And don't feel like, oh, I wish I could ask Amanda this question, but I can't bother her, because people find me on Twitter. They find me where they saw me write an article 6 years ago, and I have had people from Thailand email me and be like, I saw this thing, can you help me with it? And I love it. I will always respond if you reach out. That's what I'm here for. So don't feel like you're bothering me. I want to hear from you. All right, guys. I hope y'all have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison.
I really appreciate you.
Let me know if y'all need anything. I mean that. And have a good evening. I hope you have a good evening and a good day tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ay, 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 ay.